Hello and welcome to the CSO Impact Podcast, where we talk to leaders in sustainability. We're here to talk how work can make a positive impact on our futures and on our planet. This is a very special episode because we recorded it in Paris during ChangeNOW, which just happened a few weeks ago, a fantastic conference with about 40,000 visitors. And we had the chance to sit down with two really outstanding chief sustainability officers. One, Carine de Boissezon from EDF. She's the chief impact officer. And then Ulrike Sapiro, the CSO from Henkel. Both come from heavy industries, electricity and chemical and consumer goods. The panel was recorded right after an introduction and welcome note from Patricia Torres from Bloomberg Financial Services, and in her role also looking at sustainability finance, she emphasized the new role of value in finance. And here, hence the introduction, when you hear my opening question to Carine, taking care of, let's say, asking her feedback towards this new collaboration between maybe CFOs and CSOs. Just for a little context, the reception was really cool. We had 100 plus people. There was also another panel about fashion and sustainability, because in France you talk about fashion and luxury, which was also very enlightening. But for this episode now, let's go back to Paris and this brilliant 100 plus audience and enjoy the talk between Carine and Ulrike Sapiro.
Pleasure to be around. And if we talk about, I have a couple of questions about the role of the CSO. That's the topic of the panel. Going maybe with Patricia and coming to you, Carine, because we talked when we talked quickly, you also said the communication flow with the CFO is a little bit, let's say, either more important and or more open right now. So can you maybe reflect on this?
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, rebounding on what Patricia said, I'm a former CFO myself, so I'm head of impact at EDF over the last 5 years. And I'm now in the same team as the CFO. We are together in a team called Performance, Impact, Investment, Finance. And you see finance is at the end. So I think it's quite interesting. So that means that we are truly integrated, as Patricia said, on the value creation, but we still don't count what matters, right? So I think what I'm trying to do is hack the system on the other side, which is the accounting norms. That can sound super, super boring, but actually this is, I think, where we need to act as well, is how do we make sure that there is no discrepancy between the sustainability report, which says I'm net zero, but then in your financial account, you still have assets, which we know for a fact will be stranded tomorrow if you are truly true to the net zero, right? And today you can have this complete discrepancy and nobody cares. So I think this is what we are really trying to do in the National Accounting Commission, where I entered a couple of months ago to do this interconnectivity between the accounts and the sustainability. And I think this is the only way when we will really count what truly counts.
Ulrike, how is your take on finance risk versus value creation? How is that within Henkel and in your role?
It's become, thank you very much, and please use the chairs whilst we're sitting up here. It's become much closer in the course of implementing, I hate to say it, but it is true, of the CSRD. And to your point, Patricia, of regulation playing an enormous role to kickstart some of the developments that have to happen anyway. The collaboration, the understanding, the quantification, the real data to help the business understand long-term risks on the financial side, on the impact side, the opportunities as well. I think that we leveled up a huge amount because we had to some degree. So perhaps a trajectory that was coming anyway really got a booster. And I think it was for the better, ultimately, which is why, even though we're scratching our heads about the omnibus and what's happening, I think this is now a role for the CSOs to build the case to actually continue reporting against it. Voluntarily, whatever, but it actually helps an awful lot to build the data systems, to build the transparency, to actually provide to the business itself to start with, the information to actually plan the future. And the reporting is a secondary thing. It is really about having more steerable, useful data and understanding, and to create that closer relationship with finance, which I totally agree is ultimately the way to show more the value really of this, of sustainability for business growth.
Now, you both are in companies which are, let's say, in challenging industries, chemical or consumer brand, which has a lot of, let's say, different products inside, as well as energy. And so there's a lot of transition in all of what you do. And before we talk all about policies and so on, what are some of the initiatives maybe that you are proud of that you did, which you are starting? Because we have goals. Maybe you can share your net zero goals. We obviously want to share ambition. Why don't you share a little bit about what of the initiatives that you started and you are driving in your capacity?
Shall I start?
You have the microphone.
Because we might be in different sectors from the outside, but I think we're joined at the hip, literally. Because, of course, the chemical industry that we are downstream a user of is absolutely powered by energy. And without the move, the transition to renewable energy and the transition of the assets of the chemical industry towards being able to use renewable energy, we will not be able to meet our net zero target very clearly, which we've set in November after having already commitments and targets before. But we really went net zero by 2045 in November. And of course, we have the big challenge to decarbonize our Scope 3 emissions, which are all upstream in the supply chain, which is where companies in the energy sector come in to actually bring about the transition. We are working on Scope 1 and 2 already for many years, and so the renewable energy transformation, we're now at about 90% renewable electricity for our own operations. We're going into biogas and other energy sources for heat and steam. But yes, that's on the progress. The big question is on Scope 3, and there you have an enormous industry that is very well set up in the conventional old economy, and that is really having a challenge to get, and we need a systemic approach to really getting into the future that we all depend on. And there we have initiatives to help sort of get that wheel going. Yeah? Clearly, you're not changing a cracker in a chemical company from today to tomorrow, which is €1 billion investment or more, to be actually changing that asset. It's sitting there, it's going to sit there for 50 years. So how do we get a certain movement going by, for example, feeding in biomass raw materials into that cracker to just get started, to how can we help our suppliers to start using more renewable electricity or energy instead of gas to fire that thing. But we need to have a transition plan that really scales this up in the future, and that is a real challenge that we have to actually handle together. So the start of the energy supply chain and the end of the manufacturing, we have to have those connections and move together.
Yeah, so electrify, baby, electrify, right? That's what we need to do for sure. So for us, it's a growth story, as Patricia mentioned. But the issue we face today, I think, are twofold. The first one is who is losing, and we talked about the people who are really trying to stop the transition, because they will lose. There will be people losing for sure. And I think we haven't really tackled the situation well in advance, specifically for when you are closing a coal station. It was mentioned South Africa, Indonesia, many countries where, you can say, oh, it's great, we are putting renewables and that's fine, but actually it's not fine, because a lot of people are living out of the coal economy that they won't get out of the renewable economy. So you're creating jobs in one part of the world, but not where people are losing the jobs most of the time. So I think we really have to tackle this social just transition at the right level, and I think this is the biggest challenge that we face. The cost, of course, of the transition, it's costing money, specifically because we don't count the negative externalities. So I think this is also becoming a very tricky issue, for example, in Europe, where we have negative prices because we have huge amount of solar when there is no demand. And so at the same time, you have to invest hundreds of billions in production, in distribution, in transport, but then negative prices. Everybody loses, right? So we need to think about the system, and it's very complex. And our politicians don't have time to think about the system because they are so short-term oriented. So I think this is the two challenges that we face from the energy side. And then coming back to also what Patricia was saying about the data, there's a lot of stories about the US is cheaper, so let's move all our industries to the US. But what is cheaper? I mean, if it's just the cost of the molecules, maybe. But if you add the transport, the backup, etc., it's not true, okay? So we also need to fight on the data and the reality behind what is being said. And of course, I'm not even talking about the negative externalities about shale gas, etc. So I think we have to really have a good base for comparison. But on the other hand, and I will finish on that, I don't believe that we will reindustrialize everything in Europe. I think we need to think about where do we really need to add value. The fact that 95% of the solar panels are made in China and India means that the energy transition is cheaper for so many emerging markets, right? We should celebrate that. So maybe that's not where we should fight. Maybe we should fight for other part of the value chain, because we still need to have some form of sovereignty. So I think we need to have this maturity of where do we want to fight for the good jobs, for the good transition, but not just fight each other just on who wants to have its own local energy transition.
I have a quick follow-up on that. Did OpenAI or Google already ask you that they want to buy 2 or 3 of your nuclear plants?
They haven't asked us yet, but it's happening in the US, right, as you've seen. So when I was at the New York Climate Week, all the panelists were Google, Meta, etc. So it was the first time it happened. So, but I think it's interesting because it comes to another story, which is, can a company judge the use of its electricity? Because today, data centers are coming. Yeah. They are coming in my country like there is no tomorrow. Okay, we're talking about 1 gigawatt, not 10 megawatt, which is what we used to have. This is going to consume huge amount of electricity and water, etc. What do we say about this?
So who owns it? I saw an estimate just recently. Eric Schmidt, he said, we need all your energy. I don't know, 99% of the energy wants to be into AI. So it's a little bit, it's a huge challenge. And so AI is one of the topics, I guess, here as well that we have to address, if it helps sustainability or not. But I was asking you also, you described the challenges. What are maybe, we have, looking at our time. So I have 2 questions, but one is there any initiative you want to highlight that you worked on and that you're proud of? In all of the challenges you described?
Yeah, I think what we heard at the moment, it's a huge progress and a huge dynamic and momentum going forward. So that's the first thing I hear. Very clearly, we are up against huge challenges and pushbacks partly, but we also have a huge momentum. I personally get a lot of feedback and keenness from talking to our younger talent, particularly for junior managers and the next generation of people coming in. They're absolutely keen to hear the company and the company leadership to say and to stand by its values and to keep pushing the agenda on equity, on social issues, but also, of course, on environment. I do hear a lot of voices, and I've just actually been to our office here in Paris with a team from our customer side, be it from the industrial customers in many sectors that we're touching, be it industrials, or automotive, or telecommunications, or actually consumer brands, retailers, who are keeping on pushing the agenda, who keep on pushing net zero, scope 3, and want their suppliers, i.e. us, to be part of that and expect good data, expect clear plans for product mapping and portfolio mapping and steering, and expect a transition plan really going forward. So whatever is happening in a very thwarted political world, I think business is much further already and is actually seeing that value. I think the challenge to us as CSOs, coming back to the purpose of this situation here, this meeting, is we have to really think hard about the roles we are playing in a company. And it's always many roles. We're stewards, we're facilitators, we're moderators. That changes year on year, it changes day on day. But really have to figure out what's our role that is needed now in our particular situation, particular company, particular power play that's going on. How do we play that strategically? And I feel, generally speaking, for me, it's very, very important that we become more strategic, more able to indeed speak to the CFOs and leverage the knowledge of the finance department, but make them think more long-term, because that's not what they usually do in normal business. Make them think more long-term and push in that direction, but to also engage in advocacy. Because as you say, all of this is a systemic change that needs a systemic answer, and that's not for individual companies to only solve. So we need to engage in advocacy here, but particularly with people in policy making, to really bring that message of a progressive, really forward-looking, transformational part of business that says we need this for our own survival because we want to still be here in 10 years, right? It's not that, we all think, it's going to be done in 5 years. So we want to be here still in 10 years and we want to make sure that the long-term value of the companies is preserved. And frankly, that should actually make the board also listen.
Real quick, you can second on that. What happened with your unions?
Yes, so we signed end of January with 20 different unions at the global scale our sustainability collective agreement. It's actually pretty rare that our unions agree. So I think it's the first time I've seen it. And so I think this was a very strong signal of resistance. In a way, regulation falls, the political backlash, etc. But what stays at the end? And I think this is what we are saying. It stays. This is what unions, the employee representative, the youth, that's what they really believe in. And I think this is what is going to drive eventually the change, even if regulation falls.
Okay, we have 11 seconds to answer the most important question. Do you actually think that the CSO role is gone in 5 years from now? In my mind, I say, everybody has laptops, but the CIO or the Chief Digital Officer is still there. So do you think this will evolve and dissolve, or where do you see yourself in 5 years?
No, but I think we need to really think hard about our capabilities and developing the capabilities, in particular in strategy and strategy setting, and secondly in technology. And here we come back, AI and digitalization. There we have to up our game to make that use for us.
I think we will all be CEOs.
I like you already. Thank you so much.
So this was a special episode of the CSOs from EDF and Henkel. I hope you enjoyed the content as much as the audience did. Paris obviously is always a good reason to go as a city of light. Fantastic. I had a nice bike ride going around the city because we had a brilliant sunshine. But ChangeNOW next year, check it out. A really good tip to get the energy from the crowd, from your audience, from your peers to talk about sustainability, impact, and the role of change makers, whether from corporates or solution providers, startups, and others, and a brilliant curated program. And we're always happy to partner with ChangeNOW. I hope you enjoyed the episode and check in for the next episode on a weekly basis. Thank you for listening.